After watching things for a month, I've realized I just can't come up with the big bucks for you. Can we just get a divorce? What? Divorce? Why all of a sudden? Finally? Dad, you're late. Well, she started saying she could come up with the money. That was never gonna happen. Are you two gonna make decisions without me again? Because you're useless. If Dad's divorcing you, then you're really just a stranger now, right? Just disappear, we don't need you. Hey, that's my line to say as her husband, not yours to take. The reason I ended up being responsible for coming up with a large sum of money is that my husband's child wanted to go to med school. However, my husband decided I couldn't possibly come up with the money and sprung a divorce on me. Furthermore, my husband's child also showered me with unkind words. Truth is, I could potentially arrange the money, but is it worth handing it over for these two? If they want me gone that badly, I'll leave as they wish. I decided to stop providing the $600,000 for tuition and moved into a $10 million condo alone. My name is Mirabelle. I'm 31 and work as a preschool teacher. I work with children because I love them, of course. I'm living happily surrounded by the kids I adore. However, the job of a preschool teacher is demanding. There are various annual events, mountains of paperwork, and training to undergo. All these are done alongside regular duties. Moreover, the job involves taking care of children's lives, which is constantly stressful and physically demanding. It's not that I have complaints about my job as a preschool teacher. No complaints, but prioritizing work has made it hard to find time for romance, and I ended up surpassing 30 without getting married. Thus, I'm a bit sad not to have kids of my own yet. However, there are many preschool teachers who manage to find time for love, get married, and have children. So, in the end, blaming my job for not getting married is just an excuse for not being attractive enough. I've convinced myself that I'm too busy with work and given up on marriage, enriching my daily life in the process. A significant turning point in my life is about to arrive. I finished work a bit late. At a dinner with friends, he came in hurriedly. The man named Harry, whom I hadn't met before and was a friend of a friend. This man would later become my husband. It had already started, and the only seat available was next to me, so he sat there. I felt a bit awkward having a stranger sit next to me. However, he was very sociable and started talking to me as if we were long-lost friends, making me feel at ease despite it being our first meeting. "How are you?" "Not bad." "You were busy with work, I guess?" "Yeah, I planned to leave work early for this gathering, but right before I was about to leave, a group of customers came in, and I just couldn't make my escape." "A group of customers? What do you do?" "I work in a restaurant. My parents were looking after my kid tonight so I could relax for once, but running late like this really is bad luck." "You have a child? Still young?" "Yeah, 2 years old now. Since my wife left, I've been relying a lot on my parents." While talking to my husband, his beer arrived. And he quickly caught up with everyone else's drinking pace by downing it in one go. Typical of someone who works in the hospitality industry. His drinking was impressive. He openly shared about his work, divorce, and personal life without any reservations. It was making me feel like we weren't strangers at all. Was this the result of his customer service skills polished through his job in the restaurant? Before I knew it, I found myself talking freely about my own life. Work keeps me so busy, I haven't had time for romance. Next thing I know, I'm past 30 and have given up on marriage. "You're 6 years younger than me, right?" "It's too early to give up on marriage." No matter what negative things I said, he always responded positively. I blamed my lack of marriage on my busy work life, but he countered that I still had a chance. Throughout the night, I continued to vent about work while he listened attentively. He never disagreed or offered unsolicited advice, just affirming everything I said. I felt comfortable sitting next to him. We exchanged contact information and made plans to meet again. Despite my tendency to make excuses and complain, I doubted he found my company comfortable. Perhaps he thought I was mentally fragile and couldn't leave me be. After the dinner, we went out for meals several times and started dating. After hitting 30 and giving up on marriage, the sudden prospect of it happening has me smiling every day. But there's a big hurdle to overcome before getting married. My husband has a kid. So, building a relationship with his child, Sean, is an absolute must for marrying my husband. I've been making efforts to meet Sean, my husband's son, as much as possible to gradually close the distance between us. Mom, let's go check out that store over there. I keep telling you, she's not your mom yet. Come on, it's fine. You can call me Mom. When the three of us, me, my husband, and his son, go out to the mall, my husband's son grabs my hand, trying to lead me to the toy store. I know I shouldn't spoil him, but I'm weak to this tactic. After a year of dating, my husband's son, now 3, has started calling me Mom. Kids are more resilient than adults think. I believe Sean somehow understands that I'm not his biological mother. Still, I cherish the fact that he calls me Mom. Looks like Sean is okay with it. Then, it's finally time for us to get married. Yeah, it's my turn to step up now. On our way back from the mall, my husband looked determined. Getting married means we need to tell each other's families. Now it's my husband's turn to make an effort. I wonder if it's okay? Like, working in a restaurant and not making much, or having Sean, could they oppose our marriage? Are you worrying about that again? My dad is pretty laid back and just goes along with everything, so it'll be fine. Are you sure about that? As the day for the marriage introduction approaches, my husband, usually confident, starts repeating the same worries to me. Even someone as sociable as my husband gets nervous about marriage introductions. At first, I assured him it would be okay, but seeing my husband's rare show of insecurity made me start feeling anxious too. But my husband is indeed sociable. When we actually met with my father, they hit it off right away. So, you work in a restaurant? Maybe next time, you can cook something for us. Actually, in the restaurant, everything from ingredients to procedures is predetermined, so I can't really cook anything else. Plus, we use ingredients sent by the company, so I can't even replicate those. What's that? So, you work in a restaurant and can't cook? Yeah, unfortunately. You gotta hone your skills if you're working there. That's advice from someone who's been through life. Dad, you're not working anymore, are you? What? You're not working anymore? But still young, right? My dad retired in his mid-50s, even though he could still work past 60. Since then, he's been living comfortably off rental income. Real estate investment, huh? That's impressive. Once you're past 50, there isn't much you need to spend on. Living frugally in an old house like this, without indulging in luxuries, a small condo is enough. Harry, if you're interested, can I give you a lecture? With my salary from the restaurant, even owning my own house is tough. During this important meeting for marriage introductions, my father started advising my husband on real estate investment, making me feel embarrassed. Looking at my mother's face, I could see she felt the same. My father really is a carefree character. Despite the embarrassment, we successfully completed the introductions to my parents, and we were able to get married. All that's left is to build a happy family. However, that turned out not to be as simple as I thought. Now that we were married and had a little son, we considered establishing some rules. Sean hasn't lived with you, right? If I come in and start dictating too much, might he think I'm just the new person being too bossy? I don't think he'd feel that way. But if he sees me scolding you, it might make him feel bad. Taking Sean in, he trusts you a lot, right? I think he sees you as a hero. Seems like you're worrying too much about Sean. But maybe being overly cautious at first is better. Okay, let's do this. I'll make the decisions about our family. Anything you want to do, you need to get my okay. We'll show my authority, to keep dignity. We'll ease off this act gradually. It's a strategy. My husband reluctantly agreed to my proposal. I wonder if I'm also worrying too much about our son. But Sean is still 3, so a change in environment might significantly affect him. If it negatively impacts his development, that would be terrible. For me, it's like skipping the childbirth experience and starting parenting from age 3. With so many unknowns, I'm filled with anxiety and would rather be overly cautious. I decided to go along with my husband's suggested strategy. Mom, buy this for me. If your dad says it's okay. Hey, Dad. Buy this for me. All right, go to the checkout with your mom. Yay! Let's go, Mom. Holding a toy in one hand and grabbing mine with the other, my son leads me to the cashier. Even after my husband and I got married and started living together, my relationship with my son didn't falter. It's only been about a month since we got married, but maybe the act is already unnecessary. It seems I was indeed being too cautious with my son. However, realizing that being overly cautious wasn't necessary was somewhat meaningful to this strategy. But while the strategy turned out positive for my son, it backfired for my husband. I'm gonna take a shower, so get my clothes ready. Okay. My husband heads straight to the bathroom as soon as he gets home from work. So it's my job to bring his clothes to the bathroom. Hey, there's no coffee. I'll bring it now. Not now, you're supposed to have it ready beforehand. You really are slow. The rule is to have coffee and the newspaper on the living room table before my husband wakes up. The coffee can't be prepared too early and gets cold, nor can it be too late after he wakes up. Also, my husband wakes up just as I'm about to leave for work, making it hard to find the right time to prepare everything. Well, I'm off to work then. Even when I speak to my husband, he doesn't say anything back, just keeps staring at the newspaper. This is my life now. 5 years into the marriage, my husband has leveled up from pretending bossy to a real one. When I realized that being overly cautious with my son was unnecessary, I tried to tell my husband we could end the strategy. But he said it was too soon to stop after just a month, suggesting we wait a bit longer, and that bit has lasted 5 years. It seems that playing the role of the head of the household in our strategy, experiencing feeling superior at home, has made him quite pleased with himself. There was a psychological experiment where participants were divided into prisoners and guards, and the guards became too immersed in their roles, starting to mistreat the prisoners. It seems like my husband fell into a similar situation. But the worst part isn't just that he became a real dominant. What's this? I've told you I hate veggies. You need to eat vegetables for your health. If I say I don't want to eat them, just listen. Don't act like a mom when you're not one. The words of my son, who has grown to be 8 years old, deeply hurt me. My husband becoming a dominant has led our son to start mimicking him, trusting him implicitly. No matter how much I caution him, it doesn't help, and if I insist too much, he tattles to my husband, resulting in me getting yelled at. So, I've been trying to comply with my son's demands as much as possible. It's clear that my son's behavior is inappropriate, but my husband sides with him, spoiling him and making me out to be the villain. You got 100% again? How many times in a row is that? I don't know, I stopped counting. While I'm washing the dishes after dinner, I can hear my husband and son having a good time behind me. My son has scored 100% on another test. For some reason, he's good at studying. Without attending tutoring or studying proactively on his own. Probably, like his father who works in a restaurant, he's just naturally smart. My husband, pleased as punch, dotes on him. 5 more years have passed with my husband spoiling our son. Dad. I think I want to start private tutoring soon. My friends with tutors are starting to catch up to me. All right, if you want to do it, you should. I'll pay for it. Hey! Gather some information on nearby tutors. Now that my son is in middle school, he wants to attend tutoring. If he wants, that's fine. I'm not against it. However, it's going to use our family's money. I wish they had at least consulted me before making the decision. The money in this house comes from both my earnings and my husband's, but he decides how it's spent. Growing up in such an environment, my son is under the illusion that my husband is single-handedly supporting me and him. Hurry up and gather the info for tutoring. You're always so slow. Thus, my son's attitude remains the same. Now feeling more like a maid than a family member, the idea of divorce has started to flicker in my mind. Yet, knowing the kind nature of my husband and son before we got married, I held on to the hope that they might return to how they were, preventing me from taking the step toward divorce. Divorce is something hard to go through with when it comes down to it. But this is just an excuse. Worrying about how others will perceive me if I divorce, and the inevitable confrontation with my husband that would come with it, means facing a lot of mental and physical exhaustion. Lacking the significant energy and courage it takes to divorce, I understand I'm just putting it off using the past as an excuse. For more years have passed without mustering the courage to divorce. Wow, top of the class again. You really study hard every night, huh? Is Sean really my kid? What are you suddenly saying? It's just within the school, so it's not that big of a deal. Still, it's something to be proud of, right? I'm walking on air. As I do the dishes after dinner, I overhear my husband and son happily chatting behind me, ignoring me as usual. I continue washing up while eavesdropping. Dad, I've got something to talk to you about. What's up? You're all formal all of a sudden. Just spit it out. It's about time I decided on a career path. Actually, I want to go to med school. Med school? That's great. Are you becoming a doctor? I wouldn't oppose that. But I'm barely making the grades for a national university. To avoid a gap year, they said it might be better to go private. And I heard private med schools are really expensive. Leave that to me. If you're gonna be a doctor, I'll do whatever it takes. How much are we talking about? I heard at the tutoring center it's about $600,000. That's a lot, right? That's quite a bit. But don't worry, we'll figure it out. Go ahead and apply to your preferred school. Wait a minute. $600,000? Can we really afford that? I inadvertently stopped doing the dishes and interrupted their conversation when my husband too easily agreed to our son attending a private medical school. It wasn't just because they were making such a significant decision about my son's future without me, making me feel left out. It's because we need to discuss whether it's realistically possible or not. What? You're suddenly butting in. Are you saying Sean should give up on med school because it's expensive? I want Sean to pursue med school if that's what he wants. But realistically, how are we going to afford it? We can figure something out, right? Aren't there programs for people who can't afford tuition? Worst case, we can just borrow money from somewhere. Thinking it's that simple. If we can't pay the tuition, Sean is the one who's gonna suffer. Mom, you say it's for me, but you're really just worried about the tuition, aren't you? Why do you have to argue when Dad says it's okay? It's seriously annoying. This is why dealing with outsiders is troublesome. I'm truly thinking of Sean's well-being. That's what I find annoying. Why are you even my mom? Dad, we don't need her anymore, right? Let's not rush into things. There's a right time for everything. I was dumbfounded by my husband's overly simplistic thinking. Moreover, because my husband has taken control over the household, my son has moved beyond the illusion that my husband is the sole provider, firmly believing that tuition will be paid by him. Being seen as the adversary, I was bombarded with hostile words from both of them. However, I saw this situation as a chance as well as a moment of dismay. If I could somehow manage my son's tuition, my husband might see me in a new light, and my son might thank me, potentially bringing us back to how we once were. All right, then. This $600,000 you think is impossible. I'll take care of it. Hey, don't bluff. You're a preschool teacher, and our salaries aren't that different, right? I can't imagine you can just come up with that money right now. Stop making impossible promises. You'll end up hurting yourself. My husband and son laughed at me as if they thought I was just bluffing. Indeed, with my current income, I can't immediately come up with $600,000. But I'm over 40. If I dedicate the rest of my life, maybe I can make it happen. I decided to start preparing the money. When will the money be ready? Better hurry up, we're running out of time. I continue to be ridiculed by my husband and son. In truth, it seems like I might be able to manage the money, but there's no telling what might happen in the end. If I were to say I could prepare the money and then something turns it all upside down, I'd end up disappointing Sean. So, thinking it's best not to speak of uncertainties, I decided to endure being ridiculed for a while longer. A month of enduring later, I've finally reached the stage where I can tell my husband and Sean that the money preparations are likely to be successful. This might bring my husband and Sean back to how they used to be. That's what I was hoping for, but it seems the so-called deadline Sean had been talking about came before I could share the news. After watching things for a month, I've realized I just can't come up with the big bucks for you. Can we just get a divorce already? What? Divorce? Why all of a sudden? My husband, having just returned from work, confronted me with a demand for divorce as soon as he saw me. Hearing his words, Sean hurried over to us, beginning to back up his dad. Finally? Dad, you're late. Well, she started saying she could come up with the money. That was never gonna happen. Are you two gonna make decisions without me again? Because you're useless. If Dad's divorcing you, then you're really just a stranger now, right? Just disappear, we don't need you. Hey, that's my line to say as her husband, not yours to take. I painfully realized how foolish it was to have any expectations of them. From the outside, people would probably think I should have initiated the divorce myself much earlier. I often watch romance dramas and think, why don't they just fall in love with someone else? But being in the situation myself, I see how narrow my perspective has become. To not realize my mistake until such a dire situation. Romance dramas are more realistic than I thought. However, what's happening to me is not a drama but reality. Reality doesn't go as smoothly as dramas. I've decided to hope for as good a separation as possible with them. By as good, I don't mean amicable. I mean what's best for me. After being confronted with divorce by my husband, I left the house in disbelief at the unfairness. After 15 years of serving like a maid, this treatment felt incredibly harsh. But if my husband and son want me to leave, I'll do just that. This alone should make them regret. A week after leaving, I was discussing divorce with my husband over the phone. Your stuff is getting in the way. Can I throw it out? Wait. You don't have to bring everything, but at least pack my clothes and bags in a box and bring them over. I'll sign the divorce papers too. What a hassle. Fine, send me your address. Relieved that I'd have some of my belongings to make life a bit easier. And managing to lure my husband to my place, I felt a bit better. About 5 hours after the call, the doorbell rang. It seems my husband has arrived. Excited to see his reaction, I went to open the door with a bounce in my step. Sorry for making you come all this way. Come on in. This is a high-end condo right in the middle of the city? This entrance is made of shiny stone that reflects like a mirror. I've never seen anything like it. It looks spacious inside too. Well, it might be a bit too big for living alone. It's a 4-bedroom condo. What's that for? It's a living space for the family to relax together. You have a bedroom and yet another extra room for the family to relax? I'm totally lost. I led my husband down the long hallway. Him looking completely out of place in such luxury. Entering the living room, he was astonished again. This is the living room? It's empty? Just a small table in such a huge space? Oh, right. You only left home a week ago. My husband came up with his own answers and seemed content as he sat down. Here's your coffee. The usual hot one. Why are you living in a place like this? Why? Because it's my house, obviously. I wouldn't be able to enter otherwise, right? You ask such strange questions. How can you live in a place like this? Oh, that. This house belongs to my father. It's for real estate investment. Wait. I knew your dad was into real estate investment, but I thought it was just enough to earn a living. Why does he own such a condo? My dad is far from small scale. He's a wealthy individual with assets worth tens of billions. He owns several properties, and this is just one of them. Apparently, this is the most prestigious one he owns, so it might be exceptionally large. What? Tens of billions? A wealthy individual? My husband's loud voice echoed in the spacious room. But complaints are unlikely in this apartment. But your family home looked like any ordinary house. Wealthy people living lavishly is a common misconception. Many, like my dad, lead modest lives. There are people earning a modest income yet owning properties worth millions. So, you can't judge based on appearance or lifestyle. My dad lives in that house because it's good enough for him, despite his wealth. But during our marriage meeting, he said a small condo would suffice if one lives frugally. Didn't that mean he owned just a small property? I remember that embarrassing moment well. He wasn't saying he owned small properties, but rather, owning even a small condo could increase income, suggesting you might consider real estate investment too. As if ordinary people like us could move big money like my dad, right? He casually mentioned such things due to his carefree nature. It was really embarrassing when he started talking about those outlandish financial views. Now realizing this house was mine, my husband straightened up, unable to mock me any longer. Why did you suddenly get such a magnificent house? Did you get it because we're divorcing and you needed somewhere to live? Not at all. It's for Sean's tuition. I asked my father if he could lend me the money, explaining the situation and promising to repay it over the rest of my life. He said there's no need to repay since it would eventually come back to me through inheritance. I intended to repay regardless, but Dad casually decided to give me this house instead, saying this should cover it. This house is supposedly worth 10 billion, but with such a scale up from 60,000, I've resigned myself to not being able to repay. 10 billion? This house is worth 10 billion? My husband straightened up even more, but then fell silent. Although he had demanded a divorce, it wasn't finalized yet. He was probably trying to figure out if he could get anything from this house. So, this house was given to you, right? We're not divorced yet. Doesn't that make it marital property? Half of it is mine, right? Unfortunately, even though the house was given, the paperwork isn't done yet. It's not like I could receive it before we divorced. Technically, it's a house intended to be given to me. Of course, it's too big for one person, and after receiving it, I plan to sell it with my dad's help. I'm only living here temporarily because I had nowhere to go after leaving our home. And please, don't scratch the floors, it would decrease its value. So, when this house is sold, you're going to get 10 billion? I'm not entirely sure, but I think about half of it will be taken away by inheritance tax. Still, that leaves 5 billion, doesn't it? Yes, it would have been enough with just 60,000. I even told my dad that. He could have just sold this house and lent me the 60,000. But my dad, being the way he is, said it was simpler and clearer to just give me the house and all the money. He mentioned it would be better for tax reasons to give it to me sooner rather than later as its value increases, but I didn't fully grasp the complex talk, so I felt somewhat persuaded by my dad. With that kind of money, Sean could have gone to medical school. My husband's posture gradually slumped, seemingly shocked that driving me out meant losing access to 5 billion. He remained silent, his mind racing once again. Hey, I've got a great idea. We use that money of yours to get Sean into med school. Then, we buy ourselves a big house, something around $4 million. Once Sean becomes a doctor, we can live off the money he makes. We'll have an easy life living in a big house. If we pay the $600,000 for his tuition, it'll come back to us and more. Don't you think it's a good investment? Your talking like this just occurred to you, but weren't you planning this from the start? To have Sean become a doctor and live off his earnings? Talking about borrowing money for his tuition, were you planning to make him pay it back? There's no way I'd agree to that. Using your own child as an investment, I can't believe it. Well, yeah, I did plan on having Sean become a doctor so we could have an easier life, but it's good for him too, becoming a doctor, right? Bluffing my way through, my husband quickly let slip his true intentions, blinded by the prospect of wealth. This might just change everything. See, this seems to be his real thought. Dad, you saw me like that? Why are you here? Surprised by our son's sudden appearance from the next room, my husband stood up abruptly. After discussing Sean's tuition, my husband suddenly hinted at divorce. And with Sean using the term deadline in a meaningful way, I suspected they were hiding something from me. But confronting them directly wouldn't have led to honest answers. So, I planned to expose my husband's true nature, severing the trust Sean had in him, and hear the story from Sean himself. The bait to drag out my husband's true nature was the house worth $10 billion. I figured the immense amount would make my husband lose his composure. And having him actually see the $10 billion house would further ensure he'd lose it. I had called Sean earlier to witness this. Mom, I'm sorry. Dad wanted to divorce you because he has someone else. She's a nurse, apparently earns more than you, and being in her mid-40s with no marriage, she has some savings. So, when you opposed my med school tuition because we couldn't afford it, Dad suggested we move in with her. Sean! Don't betray me! Why are you spilling everything? It's Dad who betrayed us, right? I wasn't surprised by this revelation. Divorce now seemed more straightforward. Knowing my husband's true nature also seemed to have made Sean reflect. This outcome was precisely what I had hoped for secretly. Sean had been harsh towards me. But it was under my husband's influence. The effects experienced in childhood are hard to shake off, even as one grows older. So, Sean could also be considered a victim of my husband. I feel relieved that my son has broken free from my husband's bad influence and returned to his old self. Regarding my husband becoming a head of the household, this was a strategy he proposed himself, and since he's not a child, I have no intention of reaching out to him. We're getting divorced, but if Sean wants to go to a private medical school, I'll cover the tuition. No, it's okay. I'll give up on med school. After everything I've said to you, I don't deserve to have you worry about my tuition. Actually, I've been interested in becoming a researcher. So, I've decided to pursue a science university. See? You heard him, right? If it's not med school, you can afford the tuition with your salary, can't you? It's your duty as a parent to pay for it. And Sean, if you ever have any trouble, come talk to me. I'll do what I can to help. Hey! Why are you deciding everything on your own? Why are you deciding on the divorce and Sean's future? It's rich of you to say that. After you've excluded me from everything. I have nothing more to say to you. Did you bring the divorce papers? Leave them here and just go. No, let's talk this over again. We've been a family up until now. Wouldn't it be better if we could start over? I was treated not as a family member but as a maid, remember? It's too late for anything you say. Just leave. My husband left the divorce papers on the table and walked out of the house alone. Due to the affair, the divorce was finalized smoothly. Sean revealed to the affair partner that my ex-husband intended to marry her solely for the purpose of having her cover his tuition expenses. Upon learning the truth, the affair partner, much like myself, confronted my ex-husband before distancing herself from him. 2 years after the divorce, Sean enrolled in a private science university. As promised, my ex-husband is covering his tuition, which costs about $40,000 a year. Given my ex-husband's salary of about $70,000 from his job at a restaurant, I imagine this payment is quite a burden. However, I don't expect Sean to repeat any years. So it's just 4 years of hardship. If Sean decides to pursue graduate studies, that's another story. By the time Sean graduates, my ex-husband will be nearing 60. It would be a time when he should be preparing for retirement. How much money will he have saved after paying for the tuition? Sean might reluctantly support him if asked, but after this incident, substantial support is unlikely. Having been abandoned by the affair partner he relied on, my ex-husband is almost completely isolated. Once Sean gets a job and moves out, my ex-husband will be entirely alone. For me, as long as my son is well taken care of until he graduates from college, I'm not concerned about my ex-husband's future or well-being. My son is working hard in his studies, and it seems he's doing well in college too. However, he seems to dislike being under his father's care and intends to repay the tuition once he starts working. But I've told him not to worry about repaying the tuition because it's a parent's duty to pay for their child's education, and he should focus on his studies instead. After the divorce, I came into a substantial sum of $5 million. My ex-husband must be feeling quite bitter about it. As for what I've done with the money, I haven't spent any of it. It's still sitting in my bank account, and I continue to work as a preschool teacher. Even with this wealth, I can't quit my job because I love working with children. I haven't told anyone about the money, so no one imagines that I, going about my usual work, have over $5 million. I think I understand why people with substantial wealth might choose to live modestly and continue working. Money isn't necessary for a fulfilling life. Working and occasionally contacting my son makes my life feel very complete.